Al Capone was one of the most notorious gangsters of all time, and for about a decade, he had the entire city of Chicago in a chokehold and at one point owned over 300 businesses. But how did he build his empire? If you want to see how Al Capone was able to put the illegal booze smuggling business in an absolute stranglehold for more than a decade and make about $15 billion in today's value, you're in the right place. Welcome to Money Talks, a show about building wealth and amazing stories from history and the business principles that were applied that will help you become wealthier. If you're interested in business, finance, and the stories of how our business landscape came to be what it is today, click subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you get updated every time a new video comes out. And now, let's jump into the video. On January 17th, 1920, Congress passed a law that effectively banned all alcohol sales. They passed it because in the early 1900s, the United States was a pretty rough place. Husbands were spending their family savings at saloons, getting drunk, coming home, and beating their wives. After a while, people got upset enough that a law was passed to eliminate the public sale of alcohol. And at first, it worked. Alcohol consumption was down, alcohol-related deaths had decreased, and it looked like this entire idea may actually benefit society. However, it did not take long for underground entrepreneurs to start capitalizing on the restriction of supply. This is where Al Capone comes in. Prior to being head of the Chicago mob in the 20s, he was a bodyguard. Some people got killed, and at the age of 26, Capone found himself at the helm of the largest organized criminal enterprise to that point. Capone was able to rapidly expand the bootlegging empire and got into gambling, prostitution, protection schemes, and laundry and cleaning businesses through violence, bribery, and a few cutthroat business tactics. Capone was the most famous crime boss who ever lived, so famous that people would cheer when they saw him at baseball games. But Capone had an issue. Nearly everything he was doing was completely illegal. Alcohol was literally banned, and everyone in town knew he was a bootlegger. So how was he getting away with it? Well, simple. Capone had the entire city of Chicago on his payroll. Every judge, juror, policeman in town knew Capone and was getting paid by him to keep things quiet and basically keep Capone out of trouble. Because of this, Capone's tenure as the head of the Chicago outfit was surprisingly smooth. He gave back during the Great Depression, loaned many people money without expecting a return, and people thought of him as a modern-day Robin Hood. Anyone who talked was bribed or killed, and he was able to run his business for more than a decade. However, that would all change very, very quickly. Capone saw his older brother Ralph get sent to jail for tax evasion, so Capone instructed his lawyer to make sure that his tax situation was handled and everything was up to date. Ironically, his lawyer trying to figure out his tax situation tipped law enforcement off. They were able to quickly charge him with tax evasion and over 5,000 violations of the Volstead Act, the law that prevented the sale of alcohol. Capone was then sentenced to 11 years in prison, got out early, and died at the age of 48. So how exactly did all this work? I mean, we can hear the story, we can understand who he was, but what actually happened? Capone started as the right-hand man to Johnny Torrio, and after Torrio was nearly killed, he decided to put Capone in charge. Capone basically found himself in charge of one of the largest criminal organizations in America at the age of 26. Now, he could have easily just sat around and made millions of dollars, but Capone was a ruthless, ambitious, and surprisingly charitable man. He instead decided he would rapidly expand the empire, and he got the Chicago outfit into every vice imaginable. If you lived in Chicago at that time, you were buying something from Capone. In fact, the speakeasies who refused to buy from Capone either found themselves out of business or Capone just bombed them. He was incredibly violent and frequently called hits on rival gangs who tried to compete on his turf. So essentially, for 10 years, Capone continuously expanded the Chicago outfit, at one point owning over 300 businesses and made millions of dollars in the process. He was one of the first people to recognize the potential of Las Vegas and had plans of building casinos there. Was he a moral man? No, but he was a hell of a businessman and a competitor. So usually at this point in the video, we go through the business principles that were applied and relate them to modern entrepreneurs so you can learn from them and use them for yourself. But because Capone was a criminal, we'll keep this section a little shorter. That said, Capone did a ton of things right, and the vast majority of people would fall flat on their face if they were put in his position. Here are a few things that he did that you can learn from. Number 1, Capone treated his people well. While Capone was incredibly violent to his competitors, he was not a liar. He always stood by his word, especially when it came to communicating with his employees. Capone had so many businesses and things to do that he largely had to trust that his lieutenants would manage the empire while he looked for ways to expand. Honesty goes a long way, and Capone's men trusted, respected, and worked extremely hard for him while he was in power. Eliminating competition. While Capone's methods are not legal and are not advised, he was able to become the only game in town by completely eliminating or assimilating his competition. And nowadays, we see this with companies like Google. They literally copy every app that performs well make their own version, and steal the market share from their competitors. While it's not illegal, it's the same mechanism at play. Number 3, diversification. While Capone's main moneymaker was bootlegging, over time he expanded into just about everything he could get his hands on. Look at Amazon now. They started by selling books, and now their main moneymaker is AWS. Well, that does it for today's video. If you're interested in learning more, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you hear about our next video. Thanks for watching.